Hi, this is Nick Cap, and this is your Microbial Lab Minute. Today we're going to be looking at Aseptic technique, which is lab number 3. Here's my hint on that. Basically, what we're doing with Aseptic technique is that we are making sure that you are moving your bacterial culture from one type of medium to another without introducing any contaminants into the media or without introducing any contaminants into yourself. This Aseptic technique is a general technique that you would use kind of for everything from taking samples for a patient to basically inoculating some beer and growing that culture and kind of things like that. It's really critical that you don't introduce any other species inside of there. And so again, what can happen, and this happened to my son, is he had a urogenital infection when he was born. I think what it was due to is the person who actually took the sample contaminated the sample. And so again, he stayed in the hospital in the IC unit for a lot longer than he needed to do it. So that's it. So what we want to do first is we are going to go from a liquid culture to a liquid culture. I already have my flame going on pretty high. I'm going to use these tubes as a demo. And what you want to do is make sure that your needle is as straight as possible. Make sure that it is not red hot when you're doing this. And you're going to get your needle all kind of red hot. I got this flame set up and I got my needle all red hot. And I'm just going relatively slowly. And so what I'm going to do is go from a liquid culture to a liquid culture. I go in and touch my bacteria. And again, like we've seen before, you can actually see a little drop on side of there. You go get your other tube, you flame your tube, and you go in and just kind of go in and out of that tube. You don't need to go like this because you're introducing a contamination and you're bending your line. So that is going from a tube to a tube. Now the second thing that we want to do is maybe go from a liquid to a plate. So here's an example of a plate. I'm going to sterilize my loop. Again, it's not the straightest it's been. In order to, I would take time out to do it. And you are going to go in, just do it slowly, and it should be cool enough. I'm going to go in, grab a little bit of liquid. Okay, and then I'm going to go onto my plate, and I can inoculate my plate. All right. I got to do a little bit of loop maintenance here. So we'll do it. So we went from a liquid to a plate. We went from liquid to a liquid. Next, we want to go from a plate to a liquid. How do we do that? And again, I'm letting my loop cool off a little bit. What I want to do is, it's not very hot. I want to make sure I can get my loop. And so I'm making it straight a little bit, and I'm making sure the loop is at the end here. And so in going from a plate to a liquid, again, you got to remember, you got to sterilize your loop each time that you do it. And to go from a plate to a liquid, what you can do is, again, you let it cool off, but you can kind of touch the sides. Jannar, if you see I'm touching the sides. Now I'm just going through and I'm getting a little bit of culture. See the culture that I have on there? That's basically all you need on the culture. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my liquid culture, so not putting my top down. I flame my loop. I go in there and I kind of rub it on the side a little bit. And if you see, I have the bacteria on the side there. So
you get a close-up of that one.
It's what?
So let me get a close-up of that one. Two. Yeah.
Kind of see it in there. Again, you don't have to click it around or click on the sides and stuff like that. You just need to make sure that it's on. All right, so we went from a plate to a liquid. Now, what are you going to do if you're going to go to a plate to a plate? So here I am. I am flaming my loop. I'm going relatively slowly, kind of letting it cool down. Going from a plate to a plate, I will touch the sides where there's not a bacteria, and then I go in and get one of these bacterial colonies. You don't need to get a lot. I have some on here. And what I'm going to do is what's called a streak. And so I'm going to make an initial inoculation. You see that inoculation? Next, what we're going to do is what's called streaking for a single colony. So I'm going to flame my loop and get the bacteria off of there. And so let's just say on that line, I put 100 bacteria on that line. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that bacteria and I'm going to spread it out over half of the plate. And so it's like I'm coloring the plate, all right? And so now that bacteria, all in that 100 bacteria, instead of being just in that one spot, are now all over that large area. They're in 1/10 of the area. And so instead of having 100 bacteria per unit, it's now 10 bacteria per unit if it's on 10 times the plate. If you notice, I just flamed my loop, I let it. I then rotate my plate a little bit, touch it to make sure that it is it's cool. And then what I'm going to do is go back over it a couple of times, and then I go over my culture. If you notice, I'm not going over the top of it. I then flame my loop again, get it all red hot. Go over here, I touch it. I then go a couple of times, and then I move it kind of back and forth. This loop here is kind of damaged and it's scratching the auger, but I wanted to do this so that you can see it. And so if you see, you have a specific pattern in your auger, and that's what I'm going to be looking for, that pattern. To give that pattern to you again, and what I may have you do in class to practice is basically, so here's practice. I got my little practice thing. What I'm going to have you do is pretend using a pen. So you're going to take some of your bacteria, you're going to make your initial inoculation just by doing a line. You're then going to rotate your plate 90 degrees. You flame your loop, and then you go back and basically you color it by going back and forth like that. And you can go a little bit more. I'm going to use a different pen. You then flame your loop. I will now go back and forth. You're going to go back and forth maybe about 3 or 4 times. Right? And so we did that inoculation there. You flame your loop, and then you go back and forth a couple of times. And if you notice, I'm using all of this plate. Your plate, your book describes it slightly different. These are both techniques for isolating single colonies, and as long as you get single colonies and it works, that's fine. My way will always work, I guarantee that, and I won't mark it wrong if I do that. All right? So now you've been able to transfer using aseptic technique bacterial materials from culture to plates, plates to plates, plates to liquid, liquids to plates, and you now know how to streak for a single colony, which is going to be the first and most important thing that you do for your isolation of your unknown. This has been Nick Cap. This is the end of your microbial lab minute. Here's looking at you, kid.